Thanks everybody for joining us. Happy New Year. It is only the 4th day of 2024, but this is actually our second Ohio Organic Farmer Researcher Network event of the year. So we are hitting the ground running this year, continuing to build a network of farmers that are interested in doing on-farm research, networking with each other to build projects, and connecting with extension professionals, research professionals, and nonprofits to help make that research happen. So I mentioned it's our second event of the year. We did a do-it-yourself workshop last night as part of the Ohio Organic Grains Conference. So do-it-yourself on-farm research was the focus of the workshop. And it was a very organic grains focused event too. And we had over 50 people, but kind of settled in on a few themes to dig into for research. Soil health management was one of them, which I think across the board in farming is something we're thinking about. Weed control, not a surprise topic either that we had. We dug in a little more to looking at the soil microbiome and genomics, new technologies that are out for that. And I think what we really did and what we find we do regularly is just make introductions, which is something we're doing today too. So since the Ohio Organic Grains Conference is going on right now, we figured today those that join us probably won't be grain farmers, so we could really focus in a little bit more on specialty crops for this presentation with a more like targeted, interested audience. And hopefully everybody on the call who doesn't know each other will start to get to know each other. I see some familiar faces, and I see some names that maybe I don't know as well too, and that's the whole idea of this network. So I'm Denise Natoli-Brooks with Central State University, one of the facilitators for our group, but my job as a facilitator really is to help build a network and let farmers take the lead. One of the ideas that came up for the 2024 monthly meetings that we heard from farmers was, how do we do variety trials? How do we really get some stuff on the ground? How do we take some of these projects that we've heard about that have been done at individual sites and replicate them in other places? How do I learn protocols to do trials? And we thought, let's kick the year off with a conversation with that in mind. If you were to do variety trials, if you were to partner with a seed company or on your own, what are some things we want to think about? We're lucky enough to have Dana Hilfinger as part of our group and one of the reps from Johnny's Seeds, also a farmer, someone who is aware of variety trials, both herself and with the seed company. And so we were able to say, well, how does Johnny's do it? Let us know what's going on there. And are these things that we could do in Ohio? So Dana, I am going to turn the floor and the screen over to you to let you share with us. This is a network, so feel free if you have questions to ask them, use the chat or unmute. You have that ability as participants.
Okay, thanks, Denise. Let me share my screen. Hit this. Hopefully, can you all see the variety trials at Johnny's slide? Yeah. Okay, great. And if you do have questions throughout, I'm happy to answer any like clarifying questions throughout the presentation. I didn't make a super long presentation. I was kind of hoping there could be, a good amount of time at the end for discussion and questions too. So if you want to save them to the end, that's fine too. Okay, so my name is Dana Hilfinger. As Denise said, I'm the territory rep for Johnny's. I cover Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana, and also have a farming background myself and have a small farm outside of Columbus, Ohio. So I was talking with Denise and a few other folks about doing, how we could establish more variety trials that are looking at what performs well in this area. And she had asked me to do a presentation kind of on how Johnny sets up their trials, including both, talking a little bit about how we do it at our research farm and then also for on-farm trials specifically. So I'm gonna share about both of those things today. I'm guessing maybe many of you, if you're specialty crop growers, are familiar with Johnny's. We're a vegetable seed company that's been in business for about 50 years. 10 years ago, we became an employee-owned company as well. And I think probably one of the things that makes us maybe a little bit different than some of the other seed companies you might source from out there is that everything that we include in our catalog and have online, we've trialed usually for multiple seasons at our research farm up in Albion, Maine. So that farm is 200 acres. That includes both the trialing fields as well as areas for breeding and for seed production too. So inclusive of all three components. It's about 200 acres altogether, which results in 27 miles of beds in production. The farm is not all certified organic, although we do have some certified organic areas. But because some of the seeds that we bring in would not qualify for organic certification, we can't certify all of it. However, all of the fields are maintained using organic practices, and the crops are maintained using organic practices. And that includes quite a large emphasis on soil health. So you might be able to see from this picture here that there's pretty wide spacing in between the beds. So there's a cover crop in between production beds that we kind of alternate. We rotate whether the crop that we're trialing is in those beds or in the beds that you see it's in right now each year, so that we get a nice crop rotation. Big emphasis on organic mulch input, and generally, just trying to operate it as regeneratively, I guess, as possible. So I'm going to focus a little bit now on, kind of how we set up our trials at Johnny's, how we decide what we're trialing, and that's going to start with kind of how we do that with our research farm, and then I'll talk more about how we do that on farm after that. So our first step with any of our, before we put any seeds in the ground, usually around this time of year, is to establish what our priorities are going to be for our trials for the year. This is a really big project. We have quite a few products in our catalog, a number of different vegetable crops. So there's always more than what we can do in a given year. But our trialing team meets in early winter to set up the trial goals for the season. The trialing team includes our product managers, product technicians, and breeders. And the product manager is really kind of the industry expert for different crops, and they're deciding what is going to ultimately go into the catalog. So we have 5 product managers at Johnny's who cover collectively all of the different vegetables and tools and supplies that we sell. And then in addition to them, we have 7 product technicians, and they're working kind of directly with the product managers, but are ultimately the ones who are carrying out trials. So are usually the ones who are really intimately familiar with the differences between different varieties. As a part of those, that kind of early winter trialing meetings to establish priorities, we also, the team also gets feedback from the sales team, the reps who are out in the field, to understand kind of what some of the emerging trends are, what's feedback from growers, either whether it's around certain issues that you're seeing out in the field or a product that maybe would be desirable if we could breed it or if we could find it from one of our vendors. So all of that feedback kind of gets incorporated into these meetings to help establish the priorities for the year. And this comes with a lot of narrowing down. We start with usually a lot of goals and end up having to narrow down the list quite a bit because we get a lot more requests than we can handle. But a lot of the things that we're looking for usually in terms of crop attributes are disease resistance is a really big one. So we're kind of constantly looking for varieties that carry certain disease resistances that we think will be important for growers. Early maturing crops is another big priority that we're often looking for. And then flavor is another one that we're kind of constantly on the hunt for. I think there's a lot of probably good producing crops, but a lot of times some of the larger seed companies aren't as focused on flavor. And that's one of the things that Johnny's has really, tried to kind of carve out a niche for in part is focusing on varieties that, offer flavor as well as good disease resistance, etc. Excuse me. Getting over a cold, so sorry about that. Okay, so after we kind of go about establishing priorities, we're acquiring and logging seeds. So this usually comes down a lot to our relationship with vendors that we have. So some seeds we're producing or we're directly contracting with growers to produce. Other seeds we're sourcing from vendors to trial at our facility. And so we're sending out those seed requests shortly after these meetings. And there really our relationship with vendors is really important. We work with a lot of different companies and breeders, and not all of them like that we kind of pick and choose. I think at some seed companies, it's pretty common that they might carry the entire lineup that a breeder offers or a seed company offers. And we are really generally looking for the ones that perform best in our trials and won't just carry a variety just because it's from a certain vendor. So the planting and tending trial process is carried out continuously throughout the year, although there's a really big push, of course, in the spring and summer when a lot of our trials are getting planted and being maintained. So whether or not we're planting in a specific season kind of depends on the trial goal. So if we're looking, for example, for a certain type of lettuce, we want, let's say, like a red romaine that's really bolt tolerant, of course, then we would focus our trials on the summer months. But a lot of times for new varieties, we want to give it a look at different times of year. So for those crops that can be planted spring, summer, and fall, a lot of your cole crops like cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, as well as the lettuces and other greens like that. A lot of those ones we're planting multiple times a year to see how they perform in those different conditions. All of our plants are planted anonymously. So we have codes attached with the varieties to try to prevent the product technicians and the managers from playing favorites. So if they know that one is maybe from a certain breeder that they like or something like that, they may be more likely to rate it higher. So we try to do our best to prevent that from happening so that we can really evaluate as objectively as possible. And then with each trial, we also are planting, in addition to any new varieties that we may have brought in, we're also planting what we call check varieties. So a check variety just means like the standard variety. Or so like, for example, if we were doing a trial of beefsteak tomatoes for a high tunnel, we would probably plant something like Big Dina or one of those commercially available varieties that's really kind of the standard for that crop currently. Next up, and this happens continuously throughout the year, is the evaluation and analysis portion of the trials. So here on our research farm, the product technicians are really taking notes on a lot of different components of the plants. So everything from, kind of the end result, the flavor of the fruit or the crop, but then also the disease resistance, the color, size, shape, yield, days to maturity, and plant habit. Those are really some of the big ones that we're making notes on, and the product techs are making notes on throughout the year. Sometimes it's really clear as a result of a trial if a new variety should go into the catalog. So that's like an example of that. A couple years ago, we introduced intercut lettuce, which was just a really high yielding, nice, lofty, good textured lettuce that was pretty much like a clear improvement over anything else that was out there. But other times it's not always as clear. You know, something might score better in flavor, but do a little bit worse in terms of its disease resistance or vice versa. And, you know, then it really comes down whether or not we're going to include it in the catalog. It really comes down to many other factors. So sometimes, you know, we want to have a little bit of redundancy in the products that we offer in case one becomes unavailable. So we might add another product for that reason. It could also be that we think that the seed might be more reliable to be sourced from a new variety. We might be able to access seed more reliably, I guess is a better way to say that. So we might go with that other variety over, or we might add that other variety into the catalog. Usually if it's, you know, something that doesn't show a clear advantage over an existing variety, we'll often retrial it a few times so that we can kind of get a better look at it and see how it performs in different conditions over many seasons. So, you know, in a drier year, maybe it does a little bit better or something like that. And then we are kind of finally drawing conclusions from the trials. This is usually happening in early fall when all of the trial data is entered. From there, we're deciding ultimately what will go into the catalog. And this is a decision that is ultimately the decision of the product managers. So a lot of different people are giving input. They're receiving, you know, feedback both from the product technicians who have carried out the trial and then looking at things like price, quality, and availability of the seed. The new products that we trial, anyone that we're going to include in our catalog, those decisions are made in early October. And then catalog descriptions for us are written by the technicians and managers, and seeds are ordered all in a pretty tight timeline in the fall. And ultimately, I just wanted to kind of emphasize again that for us, at least, performance really beats the source of the seed. So we really kind of prioritize what works best, not necessarily a certain vendor or name. And that goes for stuff that we're breeding ourselves as well. You know, if we're trying to breed a certain tomato variety and it doesn't hold up as well as the current standard, then we won't release it just because it's something that we bred. So that anonymous trial structure really kind of helps with not playing favorites like that. So you just kind of take a step back and talk about the trialing program generally. So these numbers are a year old, but kind of give you a sense for the scale. So in 2022, we trialed over 3,000 varieties, and as a result, 100 new products were added into our catalog. That is inclusive of year-round efforts. So we both do field trials, spring, summer, and fall, and then we also have a number of tunnels that we're using for overwinter vegetable and increasingly more overwintered flower trials as well. And that also includes trials that are happening around the country. So we partner with farmers and extension and other kinds of field day events to provide seed to do trials in different parts of the country too. And that's especially the regional trials with farmers that we work with is what I'm going to kind of transition to talking about a little bit more here. So the regional trials program at Johnny's is an extension of kind of what I was just talking about, of what happens at the research farm. And this is really looking at the variety performance in market, so on farms where you're actually selling the product, growing and selling the product, to gauge kind of the performance and acceptability of those varieties in a variety of different environments. This is all coordinated by my coworker, M. Hofgren. They are the Johnny's Regional Trialing Coordinator, and they're the ones who are, again, kind of overseeing this whole network of trials that are done around the country. Oh, I wanted to mention also that the regional trials program, so at the research farm, we're trialing things that are kind of in all different states of commercialization. Some might not be ready to come to market for a few years, but the regional trials program is one where we're trialing varieties that we anticipate being commercialized or being available for sale soon, like in the next year or so. So we wouldn't be providing varieties that haven't had a lot of opportunities to be looked at already on our own farm before we send them out to growers, so that we're not sending them something that has a high likelihood of failing. It would be something that we have seen performs pretty closely or maybe better than a variety we currently have, and we want to kind of gut check that with a grower doing that as well to see if they get the same results. And then also I'll just say that like the varieties that we are including in these trials might be being tested. In some cases, it's a variety that's already available on the market, but maybe there's a new claim of it having a certain kind of disease resistance, say, or something like that. And we want to test it in an area where we have heard that there a lot of that disease is present. So in those cases, we might also do trials for already commercially available seed, but just test it in a market where there's maybe the disease pressure that we don't have at our research farm. So some of the big benefits of on-farm trialing that we see are that we are able to assess really how these crops do in farm conditions. So, on our research farm, really all of our efforts goes into growing the crop. We're not marketing and selling it. So we can really pay a lot more close attention to the variety. And of course, on a farm, you're pulled in many different directions. You might do things a little bit differently than the exact recipe that that we list in our catalog for how to space the plants and everything like that. So it's helpful for us to see kind of how it performs in those real world conditions. Also, as I just mentioned, we're not marketing any of the product that we sell or that we grow at our research farm. So we don't really have a sense of whether there's market demand or a preference for that variety. So getting it out to farmers and having them sell it and incorporate into their marketing plan helps us understand that a little bit better. A big one here, increasingly for us, is we're able to assess the regional disease and pest resistance of different varieties by doing on-farm trials around the country, and also just their general performance outside of the research farm and the specific conditions that exist on that farm, both the climate, soil type, etc. The challenges with on-farm trialing. So this is is real. It's definitely, I think in general, as farmers, I'm sure know, you're often pulled in many different directions, and a lot of things are out of your control. And so that can be a challenge, especially if we're kind of giving enough tomato seeds to trial for one season, and you happen to have a really wet year, a lot of disease pressure, a lot of pests, let's say bad year for aphids like it was this past year or something like that, and you end up having a poor crop performance or a crop failure, those are all kinds of the risks of on-farm trialing that are really outside of your control. And then also as a farmer, of course you're operating this as a business. It's hard to also have the time, in addition to doing everything else you would otherwise be doing on a farm, to really evaluate side by side the differences between two different varieties. So, those time constraints, and then just maybe accidents in terms of whether or not you labeled the trial variety correctly, et cetera, are all things that can be challenges for on-farm trialing, definitely. We usually anticipate that things are going to go wrong because that, it's just the way it works. That often happens. And so as a result, we're usually placing a lot more trials than we anticipate getting feedback back for. One of the ways, though, that you can kind of ameliorate some of those issues and potential challenges is by selecting partners that are good partners. In this case, that means for us, finding ones that are reliable and experienced. So this process for Johnny's is guided largely by the regional reps, so myself and my counterparts around the country. We are the ones who are often out visiting farms or talking with them regularly, and so as a result, maybe have a better idea of who might be a good partner for a trial. We are usually looking for growers that have a decent amount of commercial experience. This can vary a little bit. We don't have a set number, but I would say I usually don't kind of tap someone to be a part of a trial if they have under 4 or 5 years of experience, just because it can be hard then to determine in a trial whether differences are really the result of differences in variety, or they're the result of that inexperience and maybe having just an uneven production area or something else along those lines. We're always looking for organized farmers. That seems to really be important in terms of adding another thing to someone's plate. And the scale of the farm can really vary across our trial partners. So, some of them might be half-acre urban farms that have the space to trial a few of our tomato varieties. Others are 100-acre farms. And that's important for us because it really represents the range of our customers anyway. So it's nice to see it in a variety of different scales. A little bit more about just kind of the nuts and bolts about how we actually set up the trials with growers. So after our product manager and product tech kind of determine what the priorities are going to be for the year, they then usually are kind of determining which of the varieties that we maybe are close to commercializing they want to put into on-farm trials. So at that point, then they're talking with us, the reps around the country, to see if we have growers that might be interested in say like trialing beefsteak tomato varieties that have improved late blight resistance or something like that. And then at that point, we're reaching out to growers who we think might be good candidates for those trials. If a farmer says, yeah, I want to participate, then the next steps would be that we would provide the varieties that we're looking to trial, and then we also provide that check variety. So whatever that kind of standard is that we're comparing this new variety to. We send, this is a little bit vague, it kind of depends on the situation, but we always kind of send enough seeds to quote, get a good look. So usually for our fruiting crops, so like tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, etc., we're sending at like a minimum of 10 seeds, so 10 plants worth to incorporate into a production system. Sometimes that can be more, you know, if a grower says like, I have this much space and could accommodate a larger trial, then we can send more seeds. But you know, we also know that this is a little bit of a risk, so we're okay with just a relatively small area, but enough where we can get kind of a representative sample of what that crop might look like. For our greens, so our greens trials, so like arugula or lettuce or things like that, we're usually judging it more based on a certain amount of bed feet. And so for those types of crops, it's usually enough to plant you know, at least like a 50-foot bed worth of that crop to be able to kind of see what it looks like. And sometimes that'll be over multiple times of the year. The information that we're looking for from growers is a little bit different than the level of detail of information that we're gathering at our research farm. So we're usually asking just for qualitative feedback. So we're not maybe looking for them to provide, you know, this variety grew X number of pounds compared to the Czech variety. You know, we're maybe just looking for them to say, yeah, this seemed to have a similar yield to this other variety, or yielded a lot less, or yielded a lot more. That kind of descriptive characterization of how the crop did is usually enough, because we also have that kind of more specific information from our research farm trials. When we provide seeds to farmers, we also provide data sheets for them with very specific prompts that are related to whatever our trial goals are. You know, so if we're looking for like, how does this variety perform when it's exposed to like late blight? Like, does it do better with late blight than whatever the Czech variety is? Then we'll specifically ask that question on the data sheet. But then we'll also provide just space for general feedback on, you know, the flavor, the quality, the growing habit, etc. Something I was thinking I might mention there, but it'll come back to me. In addition to that feedback form, oh, this is what I was going to say. In addition to the feedback form that we send, we also send like marker stakes, just to kind of help the grower stay a little bit more organized. We'll like actually send marker stakes with the label of what the two varieties are, or 3 or however many varieties that we're sending, so that they can put it in the field and be able to see, be able to have a marker for where the different trial varieties are. Generally, our reps try to go out and visit the trials during the season to be able to observe the differences with the grower. Sometimes this is a nice way for the grower to just fill out the form kind of with the rep, or have the rep fill out the form for the farmer, so that it's not quite as much effort on their part when they have a bunch of different things going on during the season. And then our deadline for feedback is dependent on the crop and planting window, but generally for our summer planted and frost intolerant crops, it's that early fall timeframe. So October 1st is what we request, is when we request information by, although it's not a hard deadline. For other trials, it might be later. So if we're looking at winter squash or carrot storage, say, we might not need feedback until February or March, because we want to see how it does until a lot later in the season. And then just a couple other comments. So our trials, that I've been talking about really here are really all paid trials. So we're providing some compensation per variety that we're asking a farm to trial. That amount varies a little bit depending on the scale and the amount of feedback, but we compensate the grower in some way for their time and effort. These trials are initiated with the expectation of really more formal feedback and data to answer kind of specific questions that we have about that variety. Like, does it show this disease resistance in your area? Does it actually mature that much earlier for you than the current standard variety, et cetera? Kind of as an alternative to that, we also do some unpaid sampling. And in this case, feedback is appreciated, but it's not always that kind of formal feedback form and data sheets. And data sheets aren't always provided for that, nor do we kind of expect the same level of feedback. So a lot of that unpaid sampling, some of it can be coming from our product managers and product techs who want to get a variety out in a certain area and kind of see how it does. But some of that can also happen and really be instigated from, from the reps, so from myself or others who are out working in the field more. And so I would say, in general, like part of my interest in supporting this discussion and the idea of doing variety trials in Ohio with organic growers is understanding what kind of trials folks are interested in and perhaps how I could support that. Maybe that's through providing some of the seed or organizing a field day or something of that nature. So just wanted to kind of clarify that there's some difference there, and I hope some room for maybe us to brainstorm and develop some trials that are looking at some of the regional questions that you all might have. And that is my presentation. Here's my contact information, both my email and my cell number, and you're welcome to text or call me there. Yeah.
Thank you, Dana. Dana kind of prompted us for some post-presentation conversation, but also this is a good time for questions too. So Dana did ask, what trials are we interested in developing in Ohio, for Ohio? I'm just going to kind of put that in the chat as well, so people can feel free to unmute and discuss, but also to use the chat, whatever is more comfortable for you in getting this conversation moving forward. But also want to open it up to questions for Dana too. And one that I had was, have there been trials in Ohio that you've been involved with or know of that you can give us some examples?
Yeah, so we've done a few different trials with Ohio growers. We've done a couple different tomato trials looking at field varieties that have late blight resistance. We've also done some storage carrot trials with growers, and let's see, I think there's one other. Oh, an arugula trial looking at downy mildew resistance for arugula as well. I haven't gotten permission from all the trial peoples to share their names, so I'm not going to share the names of those farmers, but those are a few examples. Yeah.
Excellent, thanks. Deb, you have a question?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing. This is exciting. So my first couple of questions are scientific. I assume that when you're on your research for your main farm and Albion, as well as trials working in the universities, you're using some kind of replicated experimental design so you can get solid statistics. But I'm assuming that's not true for the on-farm trial. Right.
Yeah,
right.
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll do, it depends on the scale of the trial, but we will do multiple reps at the Albion farm. For our on-farm trials, we'll send, a certain number, like I mentioned, to have that minimum number of plants, but we're not looking for them to plant them in different blocks around the farm like you maybe would set up at a for a true replicated farm or replicated trial. Yeah.
Right. So the next question is whether you've been directly involved or Johnny's in general. I'm thinking you guys probably have been involved in some of the large OREI grants from the organic research and extension initiative grants federally, because I can see how that could be a fantastic partner, on a large aggregated project in our region, with maybe specific target groups of specialty crops. Do you know if Johnny Seeds in general has been involved? I know there's a lot of activity in Maine.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I do not know the answer to that, Deb. But I can ask and get back to the group.
I just throw that out as a potential. I mean, Johnny Seeds is a very highly respected, seed company. They've got a clear record in the organic arena, and I think it could be very exciting to work with them. And I think I know it's been a long time since I worked with NIFA, but that could be an exciting partnership with universities to work with Johnny Seeds and farmers. So just throw that out as a potential funding possibility.
Great. Yeah. Yeah, John.
Hi, Dana. Good to see you. That was super interesting. I could listen to more. I'm sure you've got more to say. I'm curious what you're hearing from growers in terms of like their needs, wishes, like other feedback, like just to kind of help with maybe some farmer informed strategizing and thinking.
Yeah, that's a good. Are you thinking like specifically around, like varieties that they wish had, like a certain disease resistance or something like that, or just kind of more general?
Maybe more general would be more helpful.
Oh, a lot of different things. It's a good question. I guess, I think some of the trends that I hear about I mean, certainly like improved disease resistance. We get that question quite a bit around, whether varieties have I think especially for like tunnel crops, the kind of disease package that's needed in there. And that's both for tomatoes, peppers. I also hear it quite a bit for greens. So downy mildew resistance for spinach, and I don't know, maybe just general cold hardiness for lettuce and other baby greens, other brassicas. Trying to think of other things that are really like standing out at this point. I think also like in some cases it's around like crops that maybe are more labor saving. I hear that quite a bit around just just challenges with being able to find and maintain labor, and growers looking into ways to be able to kind of cut down on some of the maintenance costs of crops. So whether that's something like growing determinate tomato varieties in a tunnel, or like basket weaving in a tunnel instead of doing the like more intensive single liter, double liter kind of training program. Those are some things I've heard about as well that are coming to mind right now. I probably have more. I'll think about them and I'll get back to you if that's okay.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Has anybody on the call participated in trials and have any thoughts about how your trialing is similar to what Dana explained or is different?
Denise, I'm not sure if you can hear me.
I can hear you, Matt.
Okay, sorry. I'm driving, so an old man and driving and trying to do a Zoom and speak at the same time is challenging my multitasking. Dana, it's really great to hear from you. Thank you so much for your comments. And Denise, I was just going to address your question directly. I've been fortunate over the years to work with probably 35 to 40 different seed companies in various capacities, both in direct trials, but also as a different type of advisor, involving lots of different vegetable crops. And one of those companies is Johnny's, and it was a true pleasure to have that interaction for sure. As Deb alluded to, I think they have stood out for Johnny's has stood out for a long time, especially in the sustainable organic space. So kudos to them for kind of setting a pace for many others to actually consider, that community of growers and their needs as a bit of a priority, because it's part of the selection under the target environment kind of ethos of plant breeding variety development. Target environment being sustainable organic stuff with their different fertility issues and challenges, and of course plant protection. So Dana, I guess I would just ask, along the lines of what Deb was alluding to, OREI and other programs, certainly there would be an opportunity for Johnny's to partner with people who would be needing such grants, probably from the university side. But what would you look to from a university partner as being a bit of a priority in that whole context? I mean, Johnny brings a lot to the table that no university could, and I'd like to think that a university could bring something to the table that Johnny's would not have. So what might be most key for Johnny's from a university type partner?
Yeah, that's a good question, Matt. And this is something I could take back as well, beyond just kind of sharing my thoughts. I could take back to our product managers and ask them that question and share back with the group too. But I think one thing that has come up again and again that I've heard both from growers in my area and then also from other reps who are working with growers is around having kind of more formal variety trialing for farms to be able to see kind of almost like a mini version of what Johnny's is doing in Maine, and have them in different regions to be able to assess a number of different varieties, and how they do in different regions, and then have an opportunity for farmers to kind of come out and be able to walk through the fields and see that. And I don't think that that's something probably that a farm could take on, as having a field that's set up to do that kind of thing, but maybe could be a good opportunity for an extension partner or a university partner to take on, who could maybe dedicate some of those resources to maintaining a trial field like that could provide an opportunity for farmers in this region to see a number of different varieties and directly how they're comparing to each other. Just as an idea, and I know that some of those are done already by Ohio State, so I don't want to I know that that's already happening, but there might be kind of specific ones for this group, that are really relevant in the organic setting that maybe aren't being addressed currently.
Yeah, let's make one quick follow point and a question. Is Deb, you may recall SARE funded from early 2000s, SARE funded work we had at Fry,
Right.
and the related offer field days and so on that your work and everybody else's were included in that. And that was basically a variety trial for sustainable organic producers. And in that case, Dana, it involved multiple seed companies. That's something that we'd be enthusiastic about, to have lots of material from different companies in one place.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did that with corn trials where we were doing both on farm, replicated on farm and on station, trialing of different corn varieties from different, all the different companies in organic systems. And I think that's recently been repeated with the new, one of the new guys on probably in your department, the corn
Yeah,
guy.
that's it. Osler's doing.
Osler.
Yes. One thing I want to add into this from, again, my job way back when I was leading offer was always looking for research opportunities. And I would ask the fundamental question, Dana, but then also think about this in terms of a broader conceptual context for a potential OREI proposal is what effects are, what issues are coming up with climate change as far as variety, selection. And I'm sure, Matt, this is a hot area, for different funders, but I would think that would be a good sell with OREI, because I'm sure there's all kinds, disease, whatever it is. I'm sure diseases that probably, as well as probably, I know for a fact from reviewing OFRF proposals that insects are a problem, more and more, and that type of thing. But just something to start thinking about.
Yeah, and I think, increasingly with more extreme weather events, a lot of growers that I see are, moving more of their production undercover and into tunnels. So maybe it's about finding varieties also that are well suited for that environment.
Right.
Which I know we have been doing for some of the more traditional crops, but maybe there's even more opportunity there to look at that in other crop areas.
Deb, you may know that Ohio is part of the general Ohio and the Southern Great Lakes region, and up into the Northeast, where, of course, Johnny's is based. The wintertime temperatures have risen disproportionately faster in the Northeast U.S. than in any other part of the country.
Oh, wow.
And I do think that, and they continue to rise at a faster rate. So one thing, while the temperatures are changing, and some other things are changing, the day length is not.
Right.
And so there is room for what you just described, with particularly in some specialty crops, which are very sensitive to light temperature interactions. And as those light temperature dynamics change, crop and variety selection may be changing, along with, like you said, insect and disease and probably weed. So it's a bit of a moving target. But as I told Eric Stockinger yesterday, the breeders will benefit either way, because there's always room for improved genetics. Always need for improvement.
I think you got the seeds here, folks, of a potentially very exciting project. And you've got Matt, at least from Ohio State, and I know there would be others from Central State, and also be thinking about other states in the region. Matt, I assume OREI still encourages multi, not only within a state, but across at least the region, correct?
That's my understanding.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think the conversation highlighting kind of the changing climate and the climate smart ag funding, of which it comes in many shapes and sizes at this point, but there's a lot of it. There are wonderful opportunities there. I agree. And I think we've got some really nice relationships built already, and more that can be built. I see a lot of possibility here. We got some comments in the chat that I wanted to make sure we're seeing in terms of thinking about what the needs are, what to trial and why. So take a look at that chat there if you want to read the full things, but no surprise to me, we did a lettuce and spinach mentioned in there as crops, which I've heard before, an interest in and need for more trialing there. And then another comment that came in looking at temperature too, which came up in conversation, and climate change. So with looking at the time and wanting to make sure to have a little more like action in here as well, because that's the idea of this network. It's not just connecting people, but it's getting some organic farming research on the ground too. We do have an opportunity to get some trials going, we really do, but it's a matter of making the connections between the individuals within the network. And the network at this point has a lot of people with different interests, but kind of targeting a few potential crops and people, a group of people that want to trial them. And that is really what we're looking for folks that can, speak up and share, not necessarily like just the people here right now, but, more broadly to say, yeah, you know what, I also am interested in Salanova type lettuces and would be interested in trialing them too, because I'm also concerned with bottom rot resistance, finding that. If we get that small group of farmers who are interested in doing some of that trialing, university spaces that we do have between Ohio University and Central State that we can do some trials too, and wonderful partners like Dana and Johnny's, we can really make this happen at many levels. But the key to the Farmer Researcher Network is going to be farmers identifying themselves to say, yeah, I want to be part of this. To know that that's what you want as farmers. You want to be part of this research and you want to see it happen. And I want to make sure that message is clear. University researchers, job is to do research, right? But as farmers, we can choose to do research. So speak up when you're ready to be able to do that research. It looks like
Denise.
Yes.
This is Lindsay. Hey, I'm a seed grower in Athens County. How do we do that? Because is it that we spend the time to find the people who do that and email them directly, or is there some centralized way to do that? That's one question. And then I do have a second question because my reception is limited and I'm in a high spot right now. My second question, this might be off topic for you, Dana, but a little bit, but like after trials happen, there's trialing. And then what's it like kind of the selection process and ongoing selection, specifically like selection of seed stock for regional adaptation? Because as a seed grower here, a lot of the seed I'm growing out has been adapted to all these wonderful seed growing regions in like upstate New York and Pacific Northwest. And I'm always curious if there's any seed companies that really value that as a grower, I can grow out and select either stock seed improvement or even just to grow out like in our region where we don't have as much of that happening.
Yeah, I can take that second question, unless Denise, you want to address the first one first.
Yeah, Dana, go ahead and address the question, because I'm actually gathering some info that I'm dropping in the chat right now.
Okay.
Thanks.
So yeah, Lindsay, that's a good question and probably a bit of a limitation, honestly, of our current seed production program right now. We are not at the point where we're sophisticated enough or able to really source very regionally specific seed stock for the different varieties that we're growing. We certainly put a lot of care into maintaining that's the stock, especially of open pollinated varieties that we have, and kind of shepherding those strains so that they're consistent and high quality, and we're constantly refining them. But at this point, we're not really able to set up, or we haven't set it up so that we're growing seed stock in the different regions of the country so that we're getting really kind of regionally specific seed stock. So it's probably an advantage that you would have currently for this region in some ways. I think definitely if you're talking about whether we would be interested in sourcing seed from you too, I can talk more to you about that offline as well, because I think we're always kind of looking for partners of different sizes to source seed from. So we could chat more about that as well. Did that answer your question? It's not a great
did,
answer, I'm sure.
No, it did. Thanks. No, I
Yeah,
kind of just keep asking it, and I that's the sense I got too. I was just wondering if there is somebody able to have the resources to do that or able to prioritize it like that.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. And I can chat also more with our team that, I don't interact a lot with that on a day-to-day basis. So I can see if there's a, maybe I can get you an even better answer to that question too and get back to you.
Thank you. I'll text you. Thanks.
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you for the question, Lindsay, and answer, Dana. I was trying to pull together just the contact information to remind everybody that the three folks that are kind of coordinating are your contacts for the Farmer Researcher Network are myself, Cassie Brown, and Johnny Spiker, who I quickly dropped their emails and names into the chat if you didn't have them already. We are behind the scenes between these monthly meetings working on gathering the folks that are interested in participating in different projects that have been pitched, started through our DIY workshops, through conversations like this, connecting with farmer leaders and developing farmer leaders, identifying them to help lead some of these projects as well. So we're your contacts if you're interested in saying, yeah, I want to be part of a trial. I want to see this trial get off the ground. Please let us know. And Brian, I appreciate your comment too, to say, yeah, there's land, we got it. Let's do something, right? There's some action we can take. Looking at what you put in the chat there. Yeah, I can see that happening. So it's these little things like this that tell us, okay, this person's interested in making something happen here, and this person's interested in making something happen here. What can we do as our initial project? So looks like Brian's saying there's space, there's potential space, in the OSU Worcester certified organic, and even just using organic practices that we could do something. All right, what might we do there? And then the same things that we're trialing, is there something you would be interested in trialing on your farm too? Different scales, like Dana said, work. Doesn't have to be all exactly the same. That's the beauty of this. So being aware of time, it is just after 1 now. This is a conversation that's actually ongoing. Today wasn't actually the first time we talked about variety trials. We just had a formal presentation. The conversation has been going on and it continues to go on. And we really are, as the network, looking for the individuals that want to do something, figuring out what are the specific varieties that we want to trial. And we are very open to all shapes and sizes to consider. So if you're like, I have something off the wall I'm interested in, let us know. If you have something that you think is pretty basic, let us know just the same, because I guarantee we're going to find other farmers interested in doing this too. And you've got a lot of support from your universities as well. And from Johnny's. So, and with that, Dana, thank you very much for taking the time with us today to give us an idea of how Johnny's does trialing, both regionally and at the main farm site. It gives us something to think about and maybe something to model as well. And thanks for all the ideas people gave. I see some real opportunities here. Our next event, we do have our monthly meeting at the beginning of February, a virtual meeting, which is first Thursday always at noon that we do that. But then also want to make sure everybody knows the Thursday of the OFA conference in February is our full day in person Farmer Researcher Network event. So that happens on the 16th of February, Thursday the 16th. Please sign up if you're interested in doing that. Cherry Valley Lodge in Newark, Ohio. It is the first day of the UFA conference. I believe if you do the workshop, the fee is just $35. You do get lunch, and it includes the evening activities that happen after the workshop too during the conference. Plus the whole UFA conference is wonderful too. So check it out. Thank you again all for participating. This is recorded, so we'll get it posted on the offer site, the OSU's offer site, so you can rewatch and share with others that may be interested. So again, thanks everybody. Happy New Year, and I'll see you soon.